Okay, well, great. Thank you, Jeremy. I am Barry Dunaway with Leadership Akron, and we are glad that all of you have joined us this morning. Leadership Akron and Heart to Heart are glad that you can be part of this Leadership Connection Forum. Last week, Jeremy and I had a conversation and said, what can we do to connect community leaders to support one another during these unprecedented times? And to share ways to leverage our strengths as leaders and organizations to creatively serve our community. Our first leadership connection is titled Remaining Hopeful Through Connection and Service. And as we think about hope, I know hope means a lot of things to each of us, but one definition that I wanted to share this morning is that hope is a combination of having goals, believing that those goals can be attained, charting a course of action to achieve those goals, and then experiencing a sense of well-being as a result of the journey and ultimately reaching that goal. Dan Flowers, President and CEO of the Akron-Canton Regional Foodbank, will share his perspectives about the leadership challenges and opportunities to serve in the spirit of hope for our community. In addition, we'll provide some best practices and other resources to help you be someone who leads with hope. Jeremy, do you have a couple comments you wanted to add as well?
Yeah, similarly, just so grateful for this unique opportunity to collaborate. And I think a lot of us are experiencing that right now as we, go through these unprecedented times, as Barry acknowledged. And so wanted to just do what we can to serve all of you to the best of our ability virtually. And again, just so exciting to see so many familiar faces and so many of you connecting in today. And so the plan is, for the next several weeks that we'll do this once a week on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. So you'll be getting information for next week's. We'll share a little bit about that as we finish up today. But we also want to acknowledge that today is a trial and it's intended to serve the servant leaders in our community. That's all of you. And so we invite you to give feedback and share any ideas that you may have. We wanted to keep it short and simple for a half hour today, but we're open to other suggestions and really just wanted to leverage that convening power that both of our organizations have in the community, again, to bring together leaders and to highlight key leaders in our community like Dan, who are doing such important work. So, we'll have a different topic each week, a different community leader. And then we also want to provide some opportunities for you all to connect virtually. That was one of the things that we thought was so important, was in this time of social isolation, to be able to connect with each other. And so there's some cool features on Zoom where we can break into different groups to have some conversations and stuff that we'll be taking advantage of moving forward. So keep an eye out for those. And I'll kick things back over to Barry, who's going to share, or who's going to introduce our guest for today.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. Well, we're incredibly grateful to have Dan Flowers with us this morning. As we know, Dan and his team are on the front line dealing with an even greater level of food insecurity in our community as a result of the health issues that we're all facing. The Akron-Canton Regional Foodbank provides hope for meeting a basic need for people, just the ability to feed themselves and their families. And I'm sure many of you have heard that even the National Guard has been brought in to support Dan and his team, making sure that food can get distributed. And I know that Dan and his group are working tirelessly to meet that need. So thank you, Dan. Just the fact that you're willing to be with us this morning speaks to the type of leader that you are. And we're just thrilled that you're willing to share 5 minutes of your perspective on hope, personal challenges, professional challenges as a leader, opportunities for us to share or to serve in the community, and how we can help you in the food bank, and perhaps other opportunities that you might want to make us aware of, and then just how having hope makes a difference for you and yourself and those you lead. So Dan, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Barry, and I'm glad to see so many people on the call today and the video conference. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Barry, am I coming through okay?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Well, so thank you for the introduction. these are some extraordinary times, certainly in our country, in our community, and in our food bank. We have been really just working nonstop since the governor's announcement, really to send kids home. Our distribution is just going through the roof. As Barry mentioned, the National Guard arrived to help us out on Monday. And, you know, although we have about 20 staff members in certain positions working from home, we've doubled down on our core business, and we are shipping out food in our vehicles and agency vehicles and National Guard vehicles. We've worked nonstop. It's 8 hours in the day, 8 hours in the night, 8 hours to sleep if we're lucky. And that's what's going on at your food bank, trying to be the type of organization that this community deserves at a time when we need to step up. And so I'm happy to talk more about what it is that we've got going on. But, you know, today the conversation is about hope. And so I took some time yesterday to reflect a little bit on that. And it kind of, my mind brought me back to when my wife was in college. We were dating, and she attended Hope College. And I remember being on campus with her and seeing a big anchor on campus. And the simple-minded guy that I am, I just assumed that the founders of the college were somehow affiliated with the maritime industry. I asked her about it one day, and she was like, the anchor, it's a symbol of hope. And that struck me as being very profound. And it got me tuned in to hope as something special. Hope being something that's uniquely its own. And I guess that the anchor is a symbol of hope because its purpose is to hold us steady when forces working against us are trying to sweep us someplace that we don't want to be. You know, you drop an anchor to keep you moving forward when where you want to be is not where the current is taking you. And I see it as kind of a pronouncement that you have an intention to be or to arrive somewhere that's counter to the direction of the forces that are working against us. And so I want you to sort of meditate on this idea of an anchor and what an anchor is to a ship. And that the mission of that anchor is not to fulfilled when it's hanging from the side of the ship. You all seen ships with anchors sort of hanging down, you know. The mission is fulfilled when the anchor is deep below the surface and it's getting dragged along the rocky bottom. And there's tension on the line. That's when the anchor is at work. And I think the same is true for you and me. If you see a hopeful person, someone who's optimistic, probably it's best not just to just assume that they're a naturally sunny person. Maybe they are. But the most hopeful people I know sort of developed a practice of intention that keeps them locked in or anchored to their vision for who they most want to be. And then over time, I think life tests us all. And those the people who work on hope, often in their darkest moments of their lives, they found a formula for perseverance, and hope is at the center of that. And, you know, I said to Barry on the phone yesterday, like, I just don't want to talk about hope as being like this awesome anchor that just keeps you going at all times. I really want to emphasize that, you know, in the metaphor of hope as an anchor, it's that hope is something that is a steadfast presence in the time of storm. And hope says that there's something in the future that's worth surviving for. And that is all the anchor any of us needs. In my life, I've drank my fair share of anxiety or depression or sadness or loss or hardship that anyone has. And I've dropped that anchor of hope into my share of rough seas. So I guess if my life is in any way a testament to anything at all, I would like it to be that the disciplined practice of hope and perseverance can be poured into a void of low self-confidence and of fear and of insecurity, and come out in a generally soft-hearted, moral, and dependable person. And that's what I've always wanted to become. So I just keep clinging to that anchor for me in my life. And I guess that's what I have to say.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for sharing your own personal perspective on how you think of hope. And I think that illustration of an anchor was something we can all contemplate, throughout the rest of the day and days ahead. Just Jeremy and I were going to ask a couple questions of you, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
And,
sure.
One that I would start with is we know that when we're hopeful, we're more resilient mentally and physically, and we can take on some of the challenges that we're facing.
Yeah.
So as you think about it as a leader, what do you think some of the core values and skills are that are necessary to be a hopeful leader?
Yeah. So, it's funny. I listen to the Daily Audio Bible podcast every day. And today there was a quote from the book of Luke, chapter 6, where they were talking about how from the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks, and so like hope happens between the ears. Hope happens between your ears. So we always have to be looking to correct our thinking. And so if you follow your thoughts to their eventual end, think about what you're thinking about. And if you don't like where you're thinking about is taking you, then you already know what you have to do. And so on the practice side, if you've ever read, what's the name of the book? We Were Soldiers and Young by Hal Moore. He's the one that the movie We Were Soldiers was based on. He had a saying, and it's like this. It says, every leader, there is always something that a leader can do to improve their position. I'm going to say that again. There is always something that a leader can do to improve their position. Look for that thing, then look for the next thing. And I think we all need to be looking for that next thing that we can improve on, and we all need to get after it. Sometimes it's going back to mend what's become broken in yesterday's improvement. I'm going to say that again. Sometimes today's improvement is going back and fixing what's broken in yesterday's improvement. If yesterday's improvement was to get better at relationships and you failed that relationship this morning, then our work to improve may be to go back before we can go forward. But if you're sitting at home today and you're wondering what it is that you can do, if you look around, there is some action you can take to improve your position. And if you were to think about hope being an anchor, a vision for what is a future state you want to achieve, then where you want to go to improve your position can often be found in your vision, which is anchored with hope.
Excellent. I feel like I want to be typing here and getting all these quotes. So thank you, Dan. Those are great. One of the things we talked about is just that importance of, you mentioned going back and even mending a relationship or something, but this idea of just creatively connecting with others during this time. Even as I saw that you're no longer able to accept volunteers coming into the food bank and things like that. But what are you doing to creatively connect with others, even in the midst of social distancing right now?
Well, I'm working every day to improve our position, to keep our staff safe, to fulfill the mission and to fulfill my duties as CEO. And to set an example, really, of what a leader is to do in a time like this. That's all I'm thinking about. Trying to do my duty as CEO in the way it should be done so that our community will be served according to its expectations for my conduct. That's it.
That's great.
Dan, let me tee something else up to you. You have a team there, and you're clearly under a lot of stress and working long hours and long days.
Was it that visible?
No, you're looking good. You're looking good, my friend. But there's clearly a lot of stress. So what are you doing to inspire your team so that they can be their best as they're thinking about serving others and serving the community?
Yeah. So, I think anybody who knows me close enough knows I'm a grunt from day one. I worked my way through college. I'm working in a lumber yard. I'm playing in heavy metal bands. I like to weld. I'm just like a hands-on guy. I'd rather be in the warehouse driving a fork truck than at a reception shaking hands, although I love people. But so the only thing I know to do is to work as hard as anybody else. and do any job that I ask other people to do. That's the only way I know to do it. To try to act outside of fear and get after it right now. That's what I'm really trying to do. And that's what I'm always trying to do. There's never been a time that I wouldn't give my life for this food bank. And I dealt with that a long time ago. So this situation doesn't present me with anything but objectives to solve every day, which I, quite frankly, I enjoy.
And that shows.
Dan, I saw came through on the chat, but it was also one of the questions that we had planned to ask anyhow was just, I think people are feeling a little bit of, okay, I can't physically be present there or even with a lot of others, so how do we help? What are some opportunities for people to serve through the food bank or even just other things in the wider community that you're aware of where people can get plugged in?
Well, the first thing I would say, and this is one thing you find out when an organization is stressed, is that people that don't have enough to do are the ones that assume that we're not doing enough. And so those are people inside the organization, and that's people sometimes outside the organization. The ones that are usually at the center of it aren't sleeping, and they're working, and they know how much bandwidth is inside of an organization, and they're doing everything they can to deliver on other people's expectations. And so I think in a lot of ways, the best thing you can do is to stay home and enjoy your break. If you're in a position to do it, my goodness, learn to play the guitar, take up welding, or get a good workout in. Try to not swear all day. I mean, there's a million things you could do. And with charities, they always need money. And so they'll let you know if they need some. And, if a charity calls you, give them what they ask for if you can. Now, otherwise, just leave them alone and let them focus on their work. That's the best advice I can give you. I mean, we need support. But right now, also, we need confidence, support, and sometimes comes in the form of space so we can get after it. And then, for us, since we've suspended volunteers, now our needs here are financial. Now, our Harvest for Hunger campaign took a big hit, and our costs have shot up big time right now. You can make a donation at Akron-Canton-Foodbank.org. You can also find links to our member agencies that are still in need of volunteers and that also need your financial support. And you can find that listed at our website. And so, I'm going to hit it one last time. If you're stuck at home, stay with what Colonel Moore said. What can you do to improve your position? Are you keeping routine? Are you getting your workouts in? Are you reading to keep your mind sharp? Learn to play guitar. As I mentioned, there's a million things you can do to improve your position. So pick one and move on it.
Excellent. Thank you for that perspective, Dan, and just some insights in, again, how we can empower you all to do what you do best every day and get involved that way. So,
we don't want to let you guys down. And we know that right now is a time where the food bank is in the core of its work. And I think there's a tremendous sense of purpose and camaraderie among the staff right now here. We recognize that this is a distinct time that we will look back on. And I don't want anyone to miss the moment and have a regret that there was something more that they could have done in this time. And so let's work is what I keep telling them. And, we have staff at home trying to keep them safe, but what I've been telling them is now is the time to step up. Let's get after it.
That's great. Well, thanks, Dan. We when we thought about the topic of hope, we knew you were the right person to ask to share some perspective. So thanks for your encouragement, your words of wisdom, your words of challenge to all of us, and we're here to support you, and we're grateful for you and your leadership in our community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Barry. Thanks to everyone. A ton of love. Your food bank loves you. If no one told you they love you today, I want you to know the Akron-Canton Food Bank loves you.
And we love you and the food bank, Dan. Thank you so much.
All right. I got to run.
Yep. All right. Get back to it.
Thanks.
Some of you are asking in the chat too about a recording. We are recording this, and we will do our best to get that out to you as well. We're going to have some landing pages on, I believe, both Leadership Akron and Heart to Heart websites. So in the next couple of days, make sure you check those websites out, and we'll do our best to get the recording and some other resources out to you. And speaking of those resources, having just heard from Dan, I love that image of the anchor and just how it grounds us and provides us that stability in uncertain times. And what we want to do now is just kind of zoom out and not out of Zoom, but zoom out from that perspective from Dan and take a look kind of through a broader lens and look at, what is it that we really know about hope and leadership? What does some of the research tell us? And what can we be doing to practically support ourselves and others to lead with hope during these times? And so we're going to ask Dr. Chris Williams and Dr. John Roper to lead us through this next part of our time together and provide us with some insights, but also some practical tools for how we can continue to do that. So I'm unmuting them, and we'll hand things over.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name's Chris Williams, and we've had the opportunity so far to hear beautifully from Dan about hope and leadership and what that means. Now we're going to add one more piece to our theme today, and that is about mindfulness and how that can support us as leaders for ourselves and for others as well when we are mindful. And Lisa Stanford, when we first got on the call, you were talking about mindfulness, so here we go. So to begin, after hearing Dan, now let's just take a moment to reflect on our own leadership experience this past couple of weeks. And a natural question to pose is, how can I maintain my sense of hope and inspire others at the same time in this time of uncertainty and certainly challenges? So as we look at this, we're also looking at how do I do this in such a way that aligns my own inner core values and authentic self with how I present myself as a leader. These are very deep questions. And one of the things that we know intuitively is that it's very hard to access hope if we can't find that stillness within us. And Dan alluded to this aspect of being able to quiet our thoughts and our emotions. And if we don't do this, we're in a continual state of action and doing, which so often happens in times of stress. But when we're in this state, we're more likely to be reactive. So this is where mindfulness comes in. And the good news is that mindfulness is a skill that can be developed, and there's nothing magical about it. Being mindful is being in a state of awareness, being very present to what is in front of us. And when we learn to be more mindful, we're more able to pay attention to that quiet voice within us, as well as pay attention to the cues in the external environment in terms of what's going on. So we're able to make conscious rather than reactive decisions. So being mindful is being able to pause, sometimes with just one big deep breath, and be able to be aware of our own thoughts and feelings while we then toggle to that external world and take care of whatever needs to be done in that moment. So what we know is that the research about leaders who are more mindful, they tend to be more focused, more clear, more creative, and here comes the big one, more compassionate with oneself as well as with others. So we're going to give you two simple tools today to help develop your mindful muscles. I know some of you have them, so we're going to further that skill. But first, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, John Roper, who's going to share a bit more about hope and what the research tells us.
Thank you, Chris.
John.
It's really nice to be here with all of you today. Our conversation has been framed really wonderfully by Dan. We've talked about leadership and hope. And Chris has introduced us now to mindfulness. And what I want to do in my few minutes here is to share a little bit about the fascinating research and science of hope, how it actually functions for us as human beings and how it's so important for us. and how we can make ourselves more able to access hope, especially in these particularly difficult times. Those of you who have been to heart-to-heart programs in the past that I have either co-facilitated or perhaps led, you know that I really get jazzed and excited by how the human brain works and all the brain stuff, and it's tempting to get into the stuff of dopamine and cortisol and acetylcholine and the amygdala and all that kind of stuff. But for our purposes here, what I simply want to make note of is that the research has clearly indicated that hope has a positive effect on our brains and our immune system. And in turn, it improves our physical health and can even impact the choices we make and the way that we behave. There's research that indicates that patients who are struggling with health challenges have better health outcomes when they have a hopeful stance in life. They also engage more readily in self-care practices like exercise, maintaining a healthy diet, and getting proper rest. All of this stuff is enhanced by holding on and experiencing an intentional sense of hope. We've posted an article for you that'll be available in the resources we'll talk about, I guess Jeremy will make note of at the end. But there's also broader research that indicates that when we experience hope, when we sit in a space where we are hopeful, our breathing slows down, our blood pressure lowers, our parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, which kind of pumps the brakes on our agitation, and our immune system is improved. So all of that is to say that, you know, when we practice hope, we experience neurobiological and neurochemical benefits. So in essence, as human beings, we are hardwired for hope. It serves us well to sit in this space where, and Dan described the components of hope as he understood it, well, where we can access that hopefulness and then be planful. So when I started this brief portion of the program for myself, I used the phrase making hope more accessible. And one of the ways we're going to do that is we're going to talk about breathing as a simple tool. And when our brains and our midbrains are screaming out, you know, threat, worry, fear, it's hard to access a space of hope when we're focused on, you know, trying to respond to the crises in the moment if we don't step back and slow things down so that we can accurately assess what's happening and then be much more planful as we move ahead. So again, one of the most simple and most accessible ways that we can do that to slow that midbrain down so that we can be more planful and intentional is the practice of breathing. So I just want to do an exercise right now that's very straightforward, just a few minutes, not even that. Even as you listen to this, there's been a lot of thoughtful stuff to engage in, to Dan, what Dan shared. But just for a few moments here, and you can see probably my eyes automatically close when I do this. So I apologize for losing touch with you. That's certainly not the intent. But as soon as I intentionally breathe, my eyes close. So be aware of the space that you're in. You might be sitting in a chair. Since some of you, many of you might be at home, you might have the opportunity to simply recline. But be aware of where your body is, what you're experiencing in the moment. Your back against the seat, your legs resting, perhaps your feet, you know, where they rest on the floor. And bring your attention to your breathing. You might even want to place your right hand on your lower belly. And as you inhale through the nose deeply, and exhale through your mouth, you want to be able to feel your hand rise and fall. Rising with the inhale and falling with the exhale. Just enjoy the opportunity for these few seconds to have nothing to do, nowhere to go. Just the opportunity to be still, to be present. Just spend a moment more following your breath, the lift of your stomach, the fall. So that's been barely a minute in terms of practice, but just for a moment, reflect on what that minute was like for you. How did your body respond? Where did your thoughts go? There might have been distractions. Just kind of reflect on that. And a more intentional practice of breathing over time can help you calm that sympathetic or that parasympathetic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, and access, that parasympathetic that pumps the brakes on that agitation and allows us then to recognize that there are things that are available to us and that there is a future that awaits us that we can help shape through the practice of hope. So I want to turn it back over to Chris now, and she'll have another practice that you can engage in to be better able to create that space for hope.
Thanks, John. And we're just going to take a couple minutes to introduce this additional practice, and it's called a purposeful pause. And a purposeful pause simply means that we focus entirely and are present entirely to a particular situation or whatever before us. So an example of this is if you watch LeBron James before he takes a foul shot, you'll notice that LeBron James takes a breath, which means he's letting go of the crowd, he's letting go of the past, and he's focusing on what is before him and giving that his full attention. It's very simple, and you can take any everyday activity and you can make it into a purposeful pause if you want. So when you're walking to your car in the morning and you get out of the car and you're going into work, usually, when you get out of the car and you're going into work, often we're looking and we're multitasking. We have our phone in our hand, we're doing some other things like thinking about our meeting. And with a purposeful pause, we would take that moment to feel our feet directly on the ground. We'd feel the air against our skin. We might look up at the sky and see the sunrise. We're being totally present in terms of what's in front of us, no multitasking. Now, the reason that purposeful pauses are so important to us as leaders is that they help us develop our being present muscles. The more we're able to consciously build in purposeful pauses throughout our day, the more likely we are to have trained ourselves in that skill and to be able to draw upon that skill when we really do need it. And when we're fully present to ourselves and to others, others notice this and they experience us as being things like more hopeful because we're feeling it in ourselves, conveying it to others, more compassionate and more kind. So right now, if we have a minute, we'd like to do one more collective purposeful pause. For those of you who are on video, we'll put a picture in front of you right now, and we'd like you to look at that picture and just pay attention to the picture in front of you. If you're on audio, no worries at all. What we want you to do is look in your office or wherever you are at a particular object or scene. You can look outside and notice the sky, which is what I'm doing right now. Pay attention to what's in front of you. What images do you see? What colors do you see? What scene does this picture before you convey? What kinds of thoughts and feelings are you having right now? We're observing them, we're not judging them, and we're in a total state of attention. All right, so we're coming back to the real world now, and John and I have given you a couple of tools for your toolkit to help you increase your ability to be more mindful. We have many creative folks out there that we've worked with in the past that give us a lot of creative ideas about how they build in purposeful pauses into their day and with the folks that they work with. Thank you so much, and I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, John, for giving us just a couple of those tools to carry with us. And we'll definitely, like we said, have some resources available for everybody moving forward. Hey, I know we're over a few minutes, so we're going to wrap up quickly. Just a reminder, we'll be back next week, April 1st at 11 a.m. And our guest will be Ellen McWilliams-Woods, the Chief Academic Officer and Assistant Superintendent for Akron Public Schools. and we'll be looking at the idea of leading with compassion and the significance and importance of that. And again, hopefully have some time for you all to connect as leaders. So thank you so much for joining with us. So appreciative of all that each of you are doing to lead in the community, to step up right now, and to be present, as Chris just shared about, and as Dan shared about so eloquently as well, in a time of need. We often say that, it's in these times of crunch and pinch that what's, deep inside of us really shows and comes out. And we're showing some great things here in the community. So Barry, anything you want to say as we wrap up?
No, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. Hopefully you were encouraged, and there are some thoughts and practices you can leave with that will help you lead with hope. So stay well and stay safe, and we hope you can join us next Wednesday. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.